Okay, welcome back to another update. And the price action that occurred overnight, to me, it's not convincing of the previous count. So I went back and had a just, brainstormed on what I could have got wrong at the lows. And I believe I have something that makes quite a bit of sense. So the count is still a one at the lows, but the A is is a bit of an interesting thing. Let me go down to the 15-minute chart. So instead of saying, oh, there was an ABC down there, I don't think that was an ABC. It's hard to tell, right? It's very hard to tell. We do have a zigzag up. I think that is a B wave, right? I think that what happened after that was a C wave. Now, what happened after the C wave, I believe, is an incomplete D wave. So it got me thinking, okay, this fits the Bybit chart pretty well because the C wave was a C wave, right? Those are pretty serious waves. And it didn't break the low. And then we had what appears to be a 5 wave move up, which still fits if you have the extra wick down or you don't, right? So it's like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wave A of wave D. So I thought, okay, what's the significance of this? Well, wave D being a breakout wave, that's a very interesting point. And the reason why I think it's interesting is because what would it break out of? And to me, the answer is basically the highs. It'd break out of this area, right? And I know that sounds kind of strange because it's so far up, but this is what D waves do. This is exactly what I've seen them do many times. So they basically grow to the point where they wick up and they confirm. Yes, it will dip down after that for a moment, and that's when it will continue. So this is what I believe is in progress here now after just not really being convinced of the overnight price action. So look, the first confirmation, that's null. That's null and void. There's two confirmations really now. We have the first one, now we need the second one. Right, the second one will confirm this that we're out of here. So I suppose looking a bit closer at the waves now, I'll go to the 5-minute chart. Right now, I think that this is an A wave. Right, it gives me the vibes of being a 3-wave move, a zigzag to the downside. With this right now, this low has to hold in order for that to be correct. Because the other scenario is that it's still unfolding, right? It's like A, B, C for A wave. That's possible. I'm not going to say that that's not possible because it is, right? Just because I've been looking at the internal structure of this thing, I don't like it too much, right? It's a little bit like this. If it's going to go wick down, it's a bit like this. So it's kind of like an A, B, C, D, E, right? I don't like this structure very much just because it means lower prices. Now, only temporarily, and I think the reason for that will become clearer as we go along, but the support level here, using the Bybit chart, etc., you know, it's hard to say, right? It's basically down at the low. We're still in that phase of chop. I hate to say it. So where would this potentially fall down to if that was the end of a wave E? Then it would probably go down a little bit lower like this, right? Back down here. Not very nice, but still within the parameters of the correction. That's fine. After that, I think that we'll get more expansion, more grinding expansion to the upside. Might intensify a little, but I think this provides some clues as to, what we can expect, given that type of scenario. Okay. So expansion of a correction means that, yes, it will basically start looking like it's moving up, but the waves won't make much sense. And that's because it'll be doing this type of stuff, right? And then when it gets to a certain point, it'll perform like a Hail Mary break, which will be similar in length to the wave A. So it'll be the wave C practically, right? So it'll be like an A, right? This B wave is in progress, right? So the C wave would end up here, sort of thing, right? And then you'd get your rejection for E, right? And this is the important part, right? We'll talk about that more soon. We just need to see this type of stuff happen. Now, why would this happen? Well, I believe it's keeping up with the symmetry, right? It's keeping up with the chop that basically it started off sharp, turned into chop, will start off choppy and turn into, more of a fast movement, but then it'll get rejected. I mean, the markets do this sort of weird stuff all the time, but it's around that point in time that things will change, right? In terms of, oh, well, there's some bullishness showing up, follow the pattern. This is good because it will create a new base, level of support at that point, which hopefully isn't too deep, right? It doesn't need to be deep. It doesn't. We don't know, right? We just don't know. But the D wave is cunning, and it will be that kind of breakout wave, right? I believe that's going to happen, right? It just makes so much sense now, more sense than the previous count. Given that I've seen a multitude of wave Ds doing this type of stuff, and you kind of wonder, what the hell? That's why I call it the breakout wave. It's also a fake out wave, but it confirms something. Something's changed, right? And then it fakes out, and then it moves up. That's cool. That's interesting. So that's my idea now. That's what I feel is happening. So now, once again, at the lows at this area right now, we don't really know unless we see another leg up. If this is a B wave occurring now, right, then this can't break this low, right? It's hard to determine whether or not this is a 5-wave move, right? It looks like it could be, right? Because you could see that there's like a 1, 2, basically how I count this is a 3 down to here, a 4 and a 5. But the part that's in the middle is weaker than the ends. So it's up in the air, right? I don't know 100%. We can only know moving forward. But to me, I think a very important thing to note is that there are only two patterns in the market, right? You got 5-wave move and a zigzag, right? So if this is, now this is a bit of logic with the waves. If this is a 5-wave move, right, there is nothing of equal length before it that occurred, right? And you might say, oh, but what about this? Couldn't this be interpreted as a 5-wave move here? Not really, because what comes after that is a sharp 5-wave move, which is not a correction on its own. So for that reason, it can't, and also because it overlapped, and also there's a couple of reasons. But the point is that you'd need to see an equal length move for that 5-wave move, and it can't break the low of the beginning of it, right? Which means it's just creating one of those patterns, right? Now, a 5-wave move in this spot, like I said, it doesn't have an equal length one before it. So it can't be like a complete zigzag or whatever. So therefore, the logic I use is, well, it needs to create one of equal length. And because of the other stuff I told you, that internal portion, there's a good chance that it'll expand to the upside, given that it's a wave D. If it's a wave D, we're going to find out, right? This is the risk you take when you trade this stuff. But I believe that it's still on track, right? But weak on the way down, right? Weak on the way up, and then take off, right? If you don't understand the waves, you won't have that kind of perspective. All you'll see is chop, 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 chop everywhere. And then you'll look back and say, oh, it's done this before, chop, 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 up and down, right? But that's where I suppose this whole thing comes into play with what's going on in Bitcoin. Obviously, it's not the same pattern, but there is bullishness in Bitcoin, and it'll transfer to XLM, but not straight away, right? And I think this is the gotcha with this pattern, is that you have to be patient as it slowly grinds away, right? Now, a lot of people might look at this in terms of, oh, we had a 5-wave move down, maybe it's just corrective. That's why it's chopping out, right? Which is okay. So I think that what tends to happen in that scenario is that the closer it gets to the top, right? For example, if you pull out a fib, right, as soon as it gets to 50%, for starters, 0.382, it'll drop. 50%, it'll drop. People trying to short it and then they get taken out, shorting it and get taken out, right? And then it sort of surprises them, and then they're like, oh shit, what's happening? So it's this kind of behavior in the market. You got to watch out. What are other people seeing? One person seeing inverse head and shoulder, the other person's trying to short it, and there's fibs. It's like this whole market dynamic going on that the XLM's trying to fight against all that stuff, whilst also adhering to the larger pattern. But because it's such a suppressed coin, it's a bit whack. So extreme patience will pay off, I believe, in this sort of scenario. There's no other way to say it, really. There's no other way to say it. Like, if you don't get shaken out of this, congratulations, right? Because it's definitely not easy. You've got to have that patience, understanding mentality. I believe in it. It's going to work, that type of thing. I don't see anything that suggests that it's going to reverse. Yeah, look, there's not even a full correction in here, according to this count. So, yeah, I'll leave it at that for now, but I'll keep tracking it and let you know how I go. Thanks for watching.